Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by tournamentpokeredge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome one and all to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am your host here in fabulous Las Vegas. Happy, as always, to be bringing you another episode of the world's longest-running poker strategy podcast. Yes, I'm here in Sin City, where the vibes are a little peculiar. It feels kind of empty, right? There's like a rodeo going on. The national finals rodeo is in town. So it's basically just poker players and guys with really big hats and large belt buckles, and the women who love them kind of floating around. But otherwise, the scene just kind of feels a little bit sparse, a little bit like not that busy. And I'm wondering if all the reports that I've heard all this year about how Vegas is experiencing a decline in tourism are actually true, because I actually notice how empty it is. But it's not empty at the Wynn Resort, where the WPT Championship is kicking off this weekend. I personally played one flight anyway of the $1,100 Prime Championship. I have conflicts that will prevent me from playing in the 10K this time around. But yeah, this Prime thing, they've shattered the record once again. I think they're going to have over 8 million. They had guaranteed 5 million. More on that later. I will share some hands. In fact, I think towards the end of this podcast, I'm just going to go through a bunch of hands that I played in my flight of the WPT Prime Championship. But first, I want to go back to a hand that we discussed last week. And this time, I want to use my favorite tool for analyzing and improving my poker game, which, of course, as you all know by now, is GTO Wizard. This program is so valuable. You can plug in the hands that you played, how many big blinds you had, what stage of the tournament you were in, get as detailed as you want, change all the variables however you want, and then the wizard will tell you how a perfect robot who never makes mistakes would play the hand. So let's look at the hand that I discussed last week here on the podcast. This came from a $33 Six Max Turbo that I played on the World Wide Web, aka the interwebs, and registration had just closed. The blinds were 1K and 2K. We just had 30K in the stack, only 15 big blinds, and the average was 35K. So this was a turbo, or possibly even a super turbo, where the average stack was only 17 big blinds. Anyway, the under the gun player opens to 4K off a stack of 40K, and the action folds all the way back to me in the big blind at this six-handed table. And I've got the king of spades, jack of spades. And I remember last week we talked about, should I just shove? I chose not to because the raise came from under the gun. But let's see what the solver thinks. And yeah, GTO Wizard never does shove with this hand facing this under the gun raise. We just call with 100% of our king jack suited. So I've got to give myself full credit for that. And now with 10,000 in the middle, the flop comes ace of diamonds, king of clubs, 10 of spades. So I've got middle pair, a gut shot, and a backdoor royal flush draw. I checked, and my opponent this time bet half to pot 5K into 10K. And I thought maybe this is where I'm supposed to check shove. I remember on last week's episode, we talked about my feeling like perhaps I played this whole hand too passively. Like when we get this short stacked, we should actually be more aggressive. So let's check that idea with GTO Wizard. And the wizard says this also is a pure call with this hand. So great job by me. I wasn't confident that I made the best play, but so far we are 100% aligned with these choices. So it's interesting. You know, I kind of have a general philosophy of the shorter I am, the more eager to get all in I should be. And maybe that's flawed logic, especially because this particular hand, while I have a lot of potential, it's not actually doing that well versus the top of Villain's under the gun opening range, which has a lot of ace X, all the sets, lots of nuts combos. So maybe we don't want to be check shoving into that type of range, even when we don't really know how to play our hand, when we're going to feel a bit handcuffed, but that doesn't stop the wizard from playing passively. So it's good to know that I have the robot's permission to play it this way, because that's what I did, guys. I checked and called this 5,000 chip bet, and now with 20,000 in the middle, and we just had just over 20,000 behind in our stack, and the turn comes the 9 of spades, giving us a straight flush draw on this board of ace of diamonds, king of clubs, 10 of spades, 9 of spades, and we've got the king of spades, jack of spades. So at this point, maybe we should shove, right? That's something we discussed last week. Now I picked up all this equity on the turn, but if I brick off, it's going to be very hard to play second pair with a jack kicker. So maybe it's better to take the bull by the horns. As you can see, I'm in the spirit of the National Finals rodeo, and I want to grab the bull by the horns and shove, but I chose not to, and then I second guessed myself later, and this hand was actually eating away at me for a while after I played it. Like, why did I play that hand so passively? But guess what, guys? The solver never donk leads, never shoves, always checks. It's a pure 100% check, once again, even with the added equity given to us by that 9 of spades. And then, facing a half pot bet, we always call with my hand. The solver does not want to check raise with this hand. And by the way, guys, the wizard actually folds quite often with other combos of king jack suited, the ones that did not pick up a straight flush draw. They either fold most or all of the time. So now there's 40,000 in the middle, and the river comes the 8 of clubs. I've only got 10,000 in my stack, and I checked with plans to call a shove, getting 5-1 if villain chooses to shove. And I checked, which the wizard does 100% of the time. I mean, we've come this far. It would be really odd to just bet on this river. So we're always checking. Villain chose to check behind, but just for fun, I put the shove in using GTO Wizard to just check my strategy here. Like, should I be planning to call a shove, getting 5-1 with just a pair of kings? And the solver actually folds this 30% of the time, even getting those delightful pot odds. We're supposed to stick this hand in the muck 30%, and we do call 70%. In reality, he just checked it back and won the pot with king 9 suited, as those of you who listened last week already knew. But you guys can see how valuable this tool would be if you're trying to improve your poker game and learn how the robots who have gotten so much better at poker than the humans have, how those robots would play in different spots. They've also got a feature where you can challenge other people to heads up play, and the wizard will help you improve your heads up lines and find leaks in your heads up game, which is really fun. They call that Poker Arena, and that's for free. You guys can try everything that GTO Wizard has to offer for 24 hours free trial, and then when you're ready to buy, you'll save 10%, but only if you click that link in the description. You must use our affiliate link in order to get the free trial and the 10% discount off your first purchase. And that link is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. Okay, guys, let's move on and let's run through rapid fire a little bit. I had a really good table at the Win. This is the $1,100 WPT Prime Championship. It's got 4 days of starting flights and a guaranteed prize pool of $5 million, which, as mentioned, was already shattered before day 1D even started. So that's how well they've done here at the Win, which still somehow feels somewhat empty. Very strange. Anyway, I played a bunch of hands in level 1. When I first sat down, the tournament had started right after I sat down, so I did not even miss a single hand of play. I woke up early. I went to the gym, I got out and got a little bit of sun on my face. I was ready to go. And we only had 5 players at my starting table. The blinds were 100 and 200 with a 200 big blind ante. And we all started with 40,000 in chips. There was a young guy. I thought he might be Indian or Pakistani, probably right around 28 years old-ish. And he has been fairly quiet at the table thus far. And this is notable. He made it 700 on the button. And the only reason it's notable is because we've been playing at this table together for about 15 or 20 minutes, and all the raises have been to either 500 or 600. So he's on the button. He opens to 3.5 big blinds, and I was in the big blind. The small blind folded, and I'm in the big blind with the ace of spades, king of clubs. So ace, king, offsuit. Obviously, we want to 3-bet this hand. We want to get some chips in there. We want to play an inflated pot with what is probably the best hand, especially 5-handed. It's hard for him to have ace king beat right now. And we also don't mind if our 3-bet takes it down. So again, he had opened to 700. I 3-bet to 2,700, so just under 4x his original raise. And now he 4-bets me to 8,300, which right off the bat, guys, this is too big. So I know you got excited, like if you've got a big hand and you want to try to shovel as many chips in there as you can, your 4-bet sizing doesn't need to be this big at all. I think 6,500, maybe 7,000 at the most is fine. You don't really need to re-raise to 3 times the 3-bet. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this sizing here. I don't think that GTO Wizard will be either, and we might discuss next week. But anyway, he 4-bet to 8,300, and I did fold my hand. So I don't know. I guess I just didn't want to play a huge pot with ace king in a 4-bet situation. This guy, he hadn't really been that active at the table, and perhaps he just was going to keep raising on me because he had a very big hand, maybe aces or kings. I know that's unlikely because I do block all combos of those hands, but look, I just didn't want to play this big of a pot 15 minutes into the tournament. Keep in mind, I would have had to put in 8,300 of my 40,000 chips just to see the flop. So that's like more than 20% of my stack that would have been in there. And it just felt like a spot to fold. I might have actually called if he had 4-bet smaller, but yeah, this just, I mean, if he wanted me to fold, I guess he played it well, but generally speaking, our 4-bet sizing can be around 2.5 times the original 3-bet. Anyway, so that's the end of that hand. Now, a new player has recently joined my table. He strikes me as an amateur opponent. He's got like a tailor-made golf visor on his head. He didn't have a backpack like most professional players would have. Guy's probably like 35 to 40 years old, white guy. Anyway, he opens from the cutoff to 700, which, by the way, has now become the standard opening bet at this table. And I was on the button at this 6-handed table, and I 3-bet with my ace of hearts, jack of hearts to 2,000. I think you can also just flat this on the button, see a flop in position. You've got a very playable hand. You can flop a lot of strong top pairs, a lot of good draws that you can play very well in position, but I preferred the more aggressive approach, and I didn't really expect him to call the 3-bet very often. It folds all the way back to our friend in the cutoff, and he does make the call. So now we're going to see a flop, and there's 4,500 in the middle, and the flop comes queen of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, deuce of clubs. So queen, 6, deuce, hero with the ace, jack of hearts. So I completely whiffed, and villain checks. I decided to bet. I put in 1,200, figuring he'll probably get the job done a lot when he doesn't really have anything. Or maybe he calls with a hand like pocket 7s, pocket 5s, whatever, but he won't really be able to call another bet on the turn with those hands very often. So it just kind of sets up for me to stay in control in this hand if he should happen to call, which is what villain does. He makes the call, and now the turn comes the 6 of clubs. So we've got about 7K in the middle, and now the 6 of clubs pairs the board, and the board is now queen of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, deuce of clubs, 6 of clubs, and now out of nowhere, villain leads into me for 2,000 into 7,000. And, you know, I just didn't believe it. I felt like he could have a draw a lot. He could have nothing a lot. This felt like a pro bet to kind of see where I'm at sort of thing. So I decided to tell him where he's at, and I raised him to 5,300 with my ace high. And another reason to play it this way is because I don't block any of the available draws. There are 2 diamonds and 2 clubs on the board, and I have 2 hearts in my hand, making it far more likely that villain is just betting a draw on the turn. And I'm actually ahead of every draw I can think of that villain should have. It feels like ace-jack is essentially the nut, no pair. So I might even be raising for value here, but I really don't mind, obviously, if he wants to fold, which he does not. He makes the call, and now I decide to give up on the hand. The river comes the 5 of hearts. Final board, queen 6, deuce 6, 5, and he checks to me once more. And once he called that raise on the turn, I thought he must have a strong queen, maybe a hand like king, queen suited that I'm not going to try to bluff in this situation. And so, yeah, I just gave up knowing I was about to lose the pot. And villain shows the queen of spades, 10 of clubs. So very strange the way he played this hand, even from the beginning. I mean, if you put this situation into any decent solver, such as GTO Wizard, you're going to see that we're not supposed to be calling 3 bets from out of position with hands as weak as queen 10 offsuit. But that's how my opponent played it, and he ended up winning a nice big pot from me. At this point, we are still in level 1, and my image is about as awful as of an image that I've ever had in any poker tournament that I've ever played in my entire life. I'm embarrassed. I just keep losing all these pots. My 40,000 starting stack is down to 20,000 now. It's really not going well early in this tournament. We're approaching the end of level 1, and there's an old lady at my table with a baseball cap on. She's probably, I'd say late 60s. She opens from the button to 500. And the player from the previous hand with the golf visor on, he makes the call for 500. And now I am in the big blind at this still 6-handed table. And I've got the 9 of spades, 9 of hearts. Now I can obviously just complete here, call 300 more, and see a flop with my pocket 9s. But no, I decided that it's a good enough hand to 3-bet, especially at a 6-handed table. And I fully expected at least one of my opponents to call pretty much any size 3-bet because that's how bad my image was. I could have maybe gone a little bigger. I made it 2,200 with the pocket 9s here. I'm fairly confident I've got, the best hand for now. So I cranked it up to 2,200, and both of my opponents made the call. So now we've got a nice big pot here. There's about 7,000 in the middle, and my stack is about 18K, so less than 3 SPR. My image is horrible. The flop comes queen of spades, jack of clubs, 5 of spades. So queen, jack, 5 with 2 spades, hero with the 9 of spades, 9 of hearts. The small blind checks, and I check as well. I'm really hoping she doesn't bet again here. If she c-bets into both of us, I'm probably just going to have to throw away my 2 9s, even though I did take control of this pot pre-flop with my 3-bet. I really don't expect this old lady to be bluffing too often. However, I wasn't planning on a strange sizing choice. She bets 1,000 into 7,000, and the small blind folds. So now it's just me and this woman. I've got all these back doors going on. I've got backdoor straight and flush possibilities, not to mention the slight chance that my pocket 9s could actually be good when she bets 1K into 7K. But yeah, I'm not ready to fold just yet. Let's peel and see if we can pick up a little equity on the turn. I call, and now the turn comes the 8 of diamonds, and our board is now queen of spades, jack of clubs, 5 of spades, 8 of diamonds. I check to her again, and the old lady on the button decides now to bet 1,000 once more, offering me 10-1 on a call. And I can't exactly resist that. She bets 1K into 9K, so I don't know what's going on, but I've now picked up a gut shot. There's also the possibility that my pocket 9s are still good somehow. I don't know what she's betting 1,000 with, but you can't get rid of me for that price. If you're milking me, great job milking me. The river comes the 6 of diamonds, final board, queen of spades, jack of clubs, 5 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, and I check one last time. And guys, can you believe this old lady bet 1,000 now into 12,000? So what in the world is going on here? I'm sorry. I can't fold. I'm getting 12-1 on a call. I don't really think the nines could be good very much, but they're good at least one time out of 13, right? So I called a crying call, and she tables the ace of spades, 10 of diamonds. So she flopped an overcard with a gut shot, picked up a two-way straight draw, and then bricked and just went with that same old sizing. Really a hopeless bluff by her. She could have really put a lot more pressure on me and possibly gotten me off of my nines. But this is what I encountered throughout the day in this tournament. Players who didn't understand theory, who didn't understand sizing, who just didn't understand the basic fundamentals of tournament poker. And guys, first prize is going to be $1 million. So we're playing for $1 million against people who would bet 1K 3 times with this hand. So, LOL, I won that hand, and that was nice. A couple of really wonderful things happened. I flopped a few sets, and I started really getting the cards now, and I still had this ridiculous image at my table, like I look like an absolute idiot. And as a result of getting a huge rush of cards, by the first break in this tournament, I had almost tripled up my 40K stack. So I went to the first break with about 115,000. Like I say, almost triple the starting stack. So that felt really good. Level 4 was pretty uneventful. Level 5, I was down to 105,000, which is still so far above average, where the average stack was only about 58,000 at this point. In level 5, when the blinds were 300, 600 with a 600 big blind ante, and I opened under the gun with my 10 of diamonds, 10 of clubs, so pocket 10s under the gun. I made it 1,600. And 3 to my left, there was an old man who had just bought in late. He had the 40K starting stack, and he called. And now the player on the button, who had been incredibly aggressive, by the way, the table was now the full 9-handed. By the time the end of the first break happened, our table had filled up. So we weren't playing 5 and 6-handed anymore. But this player on the button has been just kind of going crazy ever since he sat down. He bought in during that first break and has really been going off, 3-betting, raising everything, just really a very, very loose and aggressive, highly active player. So he 3-bets to 6,000, and he's only got 25,000 total. So I've got 105K. The first caller has 40K because he just bought in. And now this guy has 25K, and he's 3-betting me. What to do with the pocket 10s in this situation? Like, can I fold? That seems wild. Like, my hand is way too strong to fold. Should I just call and see a flop from out of position with pocket 10s against possibly two opponents? Or should I 4-bet this and see what happens? I felt like my hand was really strong for the situation. I don't really know anything about the new guy who just sat down and called my raise, but I do know that this 3-better is very happy to 3-bet on the button with God knows what, any number of holdings. So I felt like versus his range, I should be 4-betting with my 10. So I did. I made it 15K. There it is, 2.5 the size of the 3-bet. I 4-bet 2.5x to 15K. And now the old guy shrugs and shoves for the whole 40,000. So that's like 70 big blinds that he's just sticking all in on like the first hand that he's played. So I'm not really sure what that means, but the other guy has less than that. He's only got 25K and he calls. So now there's all this action. This is a huge pot at this point. There's 80,000 in there. It cost me 25K more to call. The question is, are the 10s ever any good with all this action? I don't know. I was a little bit stuck on this situation. I kind of wished at that point that I hadn't gone for the 4-bet. But now that the 5-bet shove and the call have come in, maybe it's time to just give up and throw my 10s away. I did not do that. I called because maybe I am a fish. And the old guy had pocket aces, and he just flatted my raise in the first place, starting this whole chain reaction. And the loose, aggressive player on the button turned over pocket queens. And so that was a huge pot that I lost because I was unable to catch up on the flop, turn, and river. So I have a couple more interesting spots to run through quickly today. This one comes from level 7. It's the 500 1K big blind ante level. And there's an Asian guy who recently joined my table. He's got a Harbor Freight hat on. I don't know what Harbor Freight is. It sounds like maybe a construction company or something like that. Anyway, he's under the gun at a table that is now 8-handed, and he opens to 2,000 like he always does. This guy has been playing just about every hand since he sat down. He's been doing okay. He took his 40K starting stack up to 48K, and at this point I was down to 60K. So this guy opens under the gun to 2,000. It folds to the tough European player on my right. I could not place his accent. I don't know, maybe he's Austrian, maybe he's from Switzerland. It wasn't like French or Spanish or any of the accents I'm used to hearing. So I couldn't place his accent, but he's clearly European, and he calls on the button. And now I'm in the small blind with pocket threes, the tray of diamonds, tray of hearts, and I think I can 3-bet this, but I decided to just call. We're going to do a little set mining, I guess. And now on my left, one of the chip leaders at the table, he's got over 100,000, a really big guy who keeps showing me his cards for no reason. Like every time he folds, every time he bets and somebody else folds, he keeps showing me his cards. And what's funny about this guy is he was also like sexting with his girlfriend on the phone, and he was showing me that too. I think inadvertently, but I maybe he wanted me to see his cards, what's going on his phone, his bank account statement, how much he owes on his credit card. Like this guy didn't have any sense of privacy to him at all. Anyway, he wasn't very good at poker. He was clearly an amateur, and he was running like God. And so he calls. So there's 4 of us that see this flop. Queen of diamonds, 10 of diamonds, deuce of spades. Queen 10 deuce with 2 diamonds. I've got the tray of diamonds, tray of hearts, and the small blind, that's me, I check. And then all 3 of my opponents also check. So we get to see a free turn card, and that card is the ace of diamonds. So our board is now queen of diamonds, 10 of diamonds, deuce of spades, ace of diamonds, and I've got a little diamond in my hand with my pocket trays, but I still check. And the big blind, the big guy, checks. And the original raiser, now into a pot of 9,000, he bets 2,000. And now the player that I fear the most is the European guy on my right on the button, and he folds. So I decide to call. This is obviously very speculative. Who knows if my 3 high flush draw would be good, even if it does come in. But, you know, I'm just not in the business of folding hands that might be good or might have potential when I'm getting 4.5 to 1. So yeah, I call, and the big guy folds. So now I'm heads up versus the original raiser, who could very easily have a hand like ace jack, which has me crushed, king jack, which is a straight, but I've got that tray of diamonds and I know how to use it. It's time for the river, which is the 7 of clubs. And so I bricked off here. I've just got a pair of trays, which can't possibly be good. I check, planning to fold to any reasonable bet, but my opponent does not make a reasonable bet. He instead puts in 2,000 again into what is now a 13,000 chip pot. And I just thought to myself, there is no hand that should make this bet sizing on the river. So I need to analyze, when somebody doesn't know about the fundamentals of the game, what do their bets mean? Well, generally speaking, versus less experienced, less studied opponents, small bets equal small hands, and big bets equal big hands. Not always, don't take it to the bank, but as a general rule, that has been my experience. So I felt like this small bet was maybe him trying to get a little bit of value. Maybe he's got like a weak ace or something like that, maybe even worse than that. And he's nervous about me having him beat, but he doesn't want to check it back because that feels weak. So instead, he makes this tiny bet. I decide to go for the check raise bluff on the river. I've got a diamond in my hand. I put in 15,000 chips, and he could not have possibly folded faster. That was probably my favorite hand that I played all day. I don't want to spoil the way this tournament turned out and whether or not I made day 2. So instead, I'm going to leave it there for now. And perhaps next week, we can continue with our discussion of my experience playing the 2025 WPT Prime Championship. And that'll do it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a good rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you might be listening. It helps us out way more than you can possibly imagine. That's something you can do for free. That really helps the channel. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher in fabulous Las Vegas. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start.